Some of you may have seen the popular show on Netflix called Shot Collar. And there's a picture of the fella right there. Starts off as a white collar guy. He's the banker, I think, a financial guy. And this is what he looks like a couple of years later after he gets sucked into the criminal justice system. And a lot of people say, well, that would never happen. Well, if you think that will never happen, you might want to take a look at today's headlines in the Washington Post. And here we have a doctor was charged in an opioids scheme. Then he tried to hire a Hell's Angel to silence a witness, is what the feds say. Now, we can look through this. This came to our attention by looking at an Instagram article talking about it that my wife sent me, but it's caused us to do a little bit more research here. And I went into the PACER system and found the actual case here. And the actual case shows, let me see if I can get both cases. There's actually two, but it looks like I logged out of one, where initially this person was charged with one crime, and that crime had to do with healthcare fraud. It's a doctor. A lot of doctors are currently facing challenges because of the scrutiny on the opioid epidemic. And right or wrong, I don't make a judgment call one way or the other because I don't know. But what I do know is when you take somebody who is non-criminogenic and put them into a situation that they're not used to or they don't understand, like this guy who is Jamie Lassiter on Game of Thrones, he starts off as a normal person. This is what can happen when he has to adjust to that kind of environment. And what really happens is people go in there and they really lose their sense of balance. They don't understand how the system works, right? I used to say when I was in prison, and I was teaching these courses during the 26 years that I served in prison, I would ask people, for a show of hands, how many people are going to come back to prison after they get out? And not a single hand would go up. But the reality is that the longer we expose people to corrections in America, the more those people learn to live in that environment. And when you're learning to live in that environment, you're simultaneously learning to fail when you get out. So what we want to help people do is really grasp this environment and then figure out, how do I make things better, not worse? I had to pause the video for a second to take a call. So I'm going to come back to this article that really, to me, portrays what can happen when non-criminogenic people go into a situation that they don't understand. With this era of mass incarceration, we have to realize anybody can be brought into this very high-pressured situation. In fact, I expect a lot of people are going to be coming into this situation because of some bad decisions that people are making across the country. For example, here's another article that I want to profile right here. And this is about an Instagram user who went by Anti-Vax Mama, who sold hundreds of fake COVID vaccine cards, prosecutors say. Now, this person may not recognize that by creating fake government documents, they can face serious criminal charges. This article talks about how she was so blatant in creating these fraudulent documents and then selling them online for $200 a piece, just thinking, she's whatever. I don't want to discuss the political aspects of this. All I can tell you is that she's now charged with criminal misconduct. And this article goes on to talk about a family that authorities recently arrested in Hawaii because the people were presenting these fake cards. It's a federal crime to mislead or present any type of false documentation or represent that it's authentic. And when somebody gets brought into an environment that they don't understand, like a non-criminogenic person that makes a boneheaded decision that can completely change the trajectory of their life, they go into an environment and they get put around this pressure. And that's likely what happened to the doctor. Is the doctor really trying to plot murder for hire schemes? Probably in his rational mind, I would say probably not. But when you're sitting in that situation and you're locked inside of a jail cell and you're around people who are effectively predatory criminals, you make bad decisions. And now I remember the analogy I was giving is when I was in prison, I would ask people how many people are coming back. Not a single hand would go up. And I realized that what you're showing me is not consistent with reality, because reality is the longer we expose people to corrections, the more people learn to live in that environment. And when they learn to live in that environment, they are learning behavioral patterns and mores and adjusting to a value system and a culture that is fundamentally different from what people expect to be normal in society. I was in for 26 years. That's 9,500 days. But in that environment, I was always thinking about how I wanted to emerge. And if you're under an investigation or you're going into the system, the more you can learn about that system, the more you are going to empower yourself to avoid the kinds of complications that can hurt you and can completely derail your life. We want people to learn from our channel because we understand how easily a life can get derailed. I'm not going to make a judgment call on this physician. I don't know the thought process, what he went through, but I do know the pressure. I remember the pressure. And I was charged with a serious drug crime of which I was guilty. But when I was put inside of a jail cell for the first time in my life, I remember being around guys who lived by a different culture than I lived. And they would say, hey, we can solve your problem. And you're not really thinking about the complexity of that problem. All you're thinking about is, geez, get me out of here, whatever it takes. And I made so many bad decisions while I was in that jail cell, they resulted in me getting a 45-year sentence. That 45-year sentence was because I wasn't ready to fully accept, hey, there's a pathway through here. And that pathway, the best pathway, is going to accept responsibility and pursue mitigation strategies. I made every bad decision a guy could make, and those bad decisions contributed to me getting a 45-year sentence. This physician made some bad decisions while he was in a state of trauma. I have no doubt that had he gotten arrested and been immediately released on bond and went back home, he would have had an opportunity to learn and educate himself about the system and figure out ways to make things better. And this problem wouldn't be hanging over his head right now. But now he may have been facing a sentence, and I don't know the nature of his crime. I only know that most physicians or white-collar people that get charged with these kinds of crime, they end up serving somewhere between a year and 3 years. And during that time, they can recalibrate their life and get back on track. But that's not going to be the case for somebody who is now trapped into a situation where he's facing allegations that he tried to hire somebody to interfere with the administration of justice. That would be the best thing, because if they charge him with something else, such as wanting to hire somebody to hurt somebody else, that brings in a whole new complexity of charges. It brings potential charges that could result in him serving sentence in a high security penitentiary or a medium security prison, where the pressure is so much greater. It's going to bring allegations that could result in his sentence being much, much longer. It can bring allegations that could make him vulnerable to other predatory people. So really, the more a person can learn about this system at the earliest possible stage, the more that person is going to be empowered to make better decisions. And that's why we produce new content every day. And we encourage you to look at that content on our website at Prison Professors, on our YouTube channels, on our audio podcasts, because we don't want to have situations where non-criminogenic people turn into the fellow like the guy in Shot Caller. And if you haven't seen that film, you might want to watch it on Netflix. It's a pretty entertaining film. And I would say it's not too far from reality with regard to what can happen to people who make bad decisions while they're in a vulnerable state. So very important to always remember to define success at the beginning. What's the best possible outcome? And it's important to recognize the best possible outcome, right? If a guy's brought in and he's charged with a serious crime, what's the best possible outcome? The best possible outcome isn't I'm going to be free. Right? And that's when you start making really bad decisions, when you just want to be free. And so you end up making really stupid decisions because that's not a possible outcome, right? You're not going to get in bed and hire a criminal organization to act and do a violent crime because you think that's going to get you out. That's like you're being irrational at that point. But it happens a lot. And, even if you go in there and it's hard right now, but if I think of the best possible outcome, I can start architecting a strategy that will get me to that outcome, right? I can't change the past. I can't change the fact that I may have made decisions that resulted in me facing criminal charges. That I can't change. But what I can do is influence the future. And that goes for this doctor right now. There's nothing he can do to change the past. But what he can do is start thinking about, okay, now situations changed. How do I adjust now? What could I be doing, to define success a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but the best possible outcome. I made a lot of really bad decisions early because I didn't know how to do that. And all of our work right now and the work of our team is helping people figure that out. And so we encourage you to get the free information we offer at Prison Professors. Visit our YouTube channels, listen to our podcast. We do hope that you will subscribe. And we just want to help as much as we can to understand, look, this is not your criminal charge, if that's what you have, is not going to define the rest of your life. But the way you respond to that criminal charge can definitely have a monumental influence on your future, and we hope that you make the right decisions. I'm Michael Santos with Prison Professors. We do hope that you will subscribe, like us wherever you're following us, and learn from this content. Thank you.